You signed on. You agreed?
I signed nothing. If I had, I'd stay. You'll remember I joined your train after you left St. Louis.
Wait a minute, Dutson. You know this is Indian country. You might be walking right into trouble. For 2 days past, and this day we've seen smoke and signs.
Yeah, we know that.
They're around somewhere. I can feel them. As far as you're concerned, the Comanches are welcome to. But not to your bull and your cow. We need the beginnings of herds in California.
You're right about one thing, the beginning of herds. But I'm starting my own herd. I watched the land south of here since we left the salt fork. It's good land, good grass for beef. So I'm going south where it is.
Now look, Dutson, you're too good a gun for me to let you leave the train now.
And I'm too good a gun for you to argue with.
Now, you, Colonel, that Conrad, let him be. He's a mighty set man. When his mind's made up, even you can't change it. Now, if he's heading south, mind he don't stomp on you the way out.
Are you leaving too?
Colonel, me and Johnson. Well, it's me and Johnson.
Tell him I wish him luck.
Good luck to you, Colonel.
I decided last night.
I decided too. I want to go with you.
Go off.
I know you've work to do, Tom, but I want to be part of it. I love you. I want to be with you.
No.
I'm asking you, Tom, please take me with you. I'm strong. I can stand anything you can.
It's too much for a woman.
Too much for a woman? Put your arms around me, Tom. Feel me in your arms. Do I feel weak, Tom? I don't, do I? Oh, you'll need me. You'll need a woman. You need what a woman can give you to do what you have to do. Oh, listen to me, Tom. Listen with your head and your heart, too. The sun only shines half the time, Tom. The other half is night.
I made up my mind.
Change your mind, Tom. Just once in your life, change your mind.
Send for me. Come?
Of course I'll come. But you're wrong.
My mother's.
Oh, please, if you're going to go, please go now. I want to be with you so much. My knees feel like big knives in them. Bye.
So many differences. 2 films, the same stars, even though we didn't see John Wayne in the other clip. What are some of the differences? What's that? Yeah, the scenery is very minimal. So there's no emphasis on the scenery, even though they took all that expense of shooting outside and the landscape. Very, very expensive to take your crew out and shoot out there. Most studios would not allow that kind of a budget. So here you have Howard Hawks, who takes, well, he produced the film, so he could do whatever he wanted, but he's out in the wilderness. I think it's actually in southern Utah. But it's very expensive, but he doesn't take advantage. It doesn't occur to him. And it's really just focused on the wagon train. And so, and then what's the second most obvious thing? What's that?
And everybody's close up.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. Stylistically, we have all of these close-ups where each character is individually emphasized. John Ford would never do that. He would always show his characters embedded within the community. Very, very interesting that you notice that. So here we have Howard Hawks, who's just coming from his style of filmmaking, though he had a cinematographer, but he tells the cinematographer, this is what I really want. So the cinematographer does what he wants. So all the characters are isolated and introduced as individuals. Their individuality is emphasized. That's what's central in the dialectical imagination, being an individual rights, doing what you want to do when you want to do it, doing your thing. This is the American dream. This is what our country is founded upon, are these values that come from the dialectical imagination. What else? What is central to the action? He goes off on his own. So with John Ford's film, we have Colonel Thursday who's coming into the community. He's entering into the community. And here with Howard Hawks, we have our hero who leaves the community, and it's reinforced that he was right to leave the community, because if he stayed with the community, he probably would have been butchered by the Indians. And so his decision, his personal decision to leave the community, which was a drag on his vision, and to go off and to do his own thing is celebrated and reinforced as being the right thing, just visually. And so he survives, and all those that stayed in the community, they got wiped out by the Indians. And so the message is loud and clear. And so this is what we think of as the Western with the lone hero. Which isn't true with Ford and with some other Catholic directors, but with Protestant imagination, that lone hero is central. We have all this, a lot of violence, which we don't have with the Ford films.
What about the woman?
Yeah, with Tess. What about the woman? Yeah, what happened to her?
He said she wasn't strong enough to go, and yet he leaves her to fend for herself. Which requires great strength.
Right, and so we're going to see what happens to the woman right now. Hey, why don't you turn it up? Okay, great. And one last thing I want to mention with you, and then we're going to move on. I want to just spend a little bit of time with, if you put in, let's do It's a Wonderful Life, because we've all seen that with Frank Capra. We'll just show a clip from that and talk about Capra, who's a great Catholic director. One more thing, within the sacramental imagination, the role of the priest is very important. And of course, the priest represents the value of sacrifice and the necessity to sacrifice for the community. And part of the sacrifice includes celibacy, which is something that is very difficult for our society to understand. What's the value of celibacy? Though I will say, when I was in Utah working on, I'm a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker. I made 2 films with Ute Indians, traditional Ute Indians. And I was out with this medicine man, this serious medicine man, and he was allowing me to film him. This is before video, this is Dark Ages. And I had my cinematographer with me. He was going to shoot a deer. And that's part of their religion. They shoot a deer, the deer gives its life to the community, and there's a whole ritual with the heart that I got on film, which is very unusual. We're out there in the middle of nowhere in Utah. And he said, so you're a priest, huh? You're a Catholic priest, huh? So you don't marry, do you, huh? You don't have anything going on the side? I said, no. And then he was kind of pulling my leg, right? And then he said, well, for me to practice, people come to me for healing. And I have the gift of healing, of physical healing. And for me to heal, I have to be celibate for a year. This is a traditional Ute Indian medicine man who told me this. And so I think there needs to be a lot more study on celibacy and its values and its purposes. But with John Ford, his John Wayne character is always celibate while he's serving the community. All of his films, check it out. It's very interesting. Whereas with Howard Hawks, that's not important at all. It has nothing, just being virile and being a man and doing what you want to do. That's the important value in Howard Hawks. in this dialectical imagination. Okay, so let's just play a little bit of It's a Wonderful Life. We've all seen Frank Capra. He was actually, we'll turn it down. Yeah, we don't need, Frank Capra was actually born in Italy. His parents moved him here. They moved to LA when he was 3 years old. A large Italian family. He was very, very smart and precocious, and he went to college. His mother didn't even want him to go to high school. She wanted him to work along with everybody else. And they worked in the canning factory, in the olive oil canning factory. And she wanted all the kids to work to make money. That was the day. You know, this is the early 1900s. But he went off on his own and just driven by the American dream. And his films are all about that. And all of his films, they mask these Italian virtues and values in this Anglo covering. And so he works a lot with Jimmy Stewart, and Jimmy Stewart is the ultimate Anglo-American Protestant hero. And Donna Reed, the ultimate waspy Donna Reed. In this film, of course, the main family are the Baileys. Once again, this is 48. This is post-World War II, where Catholics, Italians, Irish, all the different Catholic minorities are feeling pretty good about themselves and wanting to be mainstreamed into the American dream. And so we have the Baileys are the main family. And then we have Mr. Potter. Mr. Potter is this crotchety old banker. And it's implied that he is a white Anglo-Saxon property owner. He's coming from this Protestant tradition. And he's only interested in profits. He's only interested in money. He's only interested in his own thing. Whereas the Baileys, they're committed to providing home loans to families that can't pay cash, but want a home. And so what's interesting about Frank Capra, he's very smart. He was a scientist. He loved science. So we have who's the Clarence? We have Clarence the Angel, who pops in from this other world. And for Capra, he was very much convinced of how science and religion interact with one another and would never conflict with each other. And so there's some interesting stories about Albert Einstein and how he became convinced of the Big Bang Theory through a Catholic priest, Father Le Montaigne. It's a very interesting story. And the whole notion of Big Bang and the creation being accepted by science, which was perpetuated and made popular by Einstein, was introduced by a Catholic priest. And Frank Capra was very interested in the scientific world, scientific realm. And he went to Cal Polytech, which was California's version of MIT. And so his films, even though they're kind of goofy, and we have Clarence the Angel, and we have all this goofiness in his films, there's actually a lot of very serious ideas underneath his work. What's primary with Capra that I want to emphasize is his emphasis on gender. And we're all interested in gender. We all know about gender and gender identity. And what's interesting with Capra is that he imbues his male characters with feminine characteristics. All of his male characters in all of his films actually embody all the characteristics that are associated with the Virgin Mary, the Blessed Virgin Mother, of sacrifice and long suffering and gentleness and humility and graciousness and nurturing and a deep spirituality and a kind of power from all these values. And so George Bailey has all these characteristics. This is the young George Bailey, and telling the story of him and his brother, and who has all the glory, and he has everything right goes for him. And George is always stuck in Bedford Falls, and he can never get out. And he's falsely accused of crimes that he didn't commit. And he's humiliated by Mr. Potter, and he's about to be arrested. It's a great film. It's very interesting. And he suffers all these things, like the Virgin Mother. suffers as she watches her son being degraded and being humiliated and being, strung up on the cross. And it's Mary who's there, Mary who sticks with him. And it's Mary who witnesses all this degradation and all this horrible treatment that's part of the human experience. And she still has this faith, and she has this ability to continue to believe, to keep on going on. And then I don't know if you remember this. All of us have seen this film, I'm sure, at some point on TV. At the end of the film, there's a big gathering, and once again, this is really important. And so we have and what time of year is it? It's Christmas. With Capra, it's always Christmas. Once again, the Christmas story, the miracle. Miracles happen at Christmas. The virgin birth is this incredible miracle. It's a fairy tale. It's a children's story. How can you believe in such a thing? But this is the sacramental imagination. This ability to stretch how you think, and this is what the resurrection does. The resurrection stretches how we conceive the world to be. If you can believe in the resurrection, your mind's opened to all kinds of possibilities. And we know that this is how progress happens, when people can think outside the box, when our imaginations are really stretched. And so here we have Frank Capra, who very consciously understood that he was making films to a general public, and he had a conversion experience, and his wife converted to Catholicism. They had their 4 kids baptized. He had this conversion experience, and he became very, very serious about his Catholic mission. He was very much part of the parish Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills, where I've celebrated Mass a few times. Celebrated Mass for Loretta Young there. She was lionized at Providence College, and I had a chance to go out there and meet her a few times. She knew John Ford very well. And I have 5 minutes left? Okay. So let's cut this, because I do want to talk about Hitchcock. Hitchcock, and there's so many directors. I mean, I could go on for days. But Hitchcock is the great, great Catholic director. Even though he was asked, do you consider yourself a Catholic director? He always said, no, I'm not a Catholic director, blah, blah, blah. But all of his films are about the Catholic imagination. All of his films are about, guess what? Catholic guilt. Everything in his films are about Catholic guilt. And he's coming from this Jesuit tradition, which emphasized the formation of your conscience, which is what all of our Catholic education is all about, to form the conscience of your child. And so that's why we have children who are 2 years old. Though I understand the sisters changed that to a later date, but we have second graders who make their first confession, and you go, why would you make a 2-year-old confess something? I've heard some great confessions from kids. One was, I pushed my best friend down in the school playground, and he laid it on a bottle cap, and he hurt himself. What could be more innocent than that? Why do we do that? This formation of conscience. Conscience is so important for Catholics. Conscience is the place where we touch God. For Catholics, conscience is where we meet God, in our conscience. And that's part of our tradition. It's part of how we can live in community. The only way we can live in community is when we have sensitive consciences, when we kind of understand, this is really bugging so-and-so. I really should trim this down. But you have to have a conscience. Some of us know people who have no consciences. They're like brain dead. Maybe you have kids that are like that. You like to strangle them. They're impossible to live with. People that don't have consciences, we lock them up in prisons because they don't have consciences. And so conscience is so important for community, so it all fits together. With Hitchcock, all of his films are about conscience, and they're all about guilt. They're all about original sin. They're all about confession. They're all about penance. They're all about innocence and trying to figure out and improve your innocence. Here we go. So, Psycho, of course. Did anybody see, what was the film that came out that was, did anyone see the Hitchcock movie that came out? What was it? Anyone know the name of it? Came out this spring. What's that? No, it was about the making of Psycho. I forget the name of it. In any event, it's a really great film. But his wife converted, Alma converted to Catholicism. Their daughter Patricia married a very prominent Connolly from Boston, I think was related to one of the bishops around here, and practiced Catholicism, but not fervently, but he always identified as Catholic on his films. Now, Psycho is interesting because what Hitchcock does is he focuses in on the dark side of Catholicism. Everything and everybody in every institution has a dark side, and Hitchcock focuses on the dark side. So he takes the idea of the beatific vision and seeing, and why don't you go to that scene, because that's all we have time for. And he takes this idea of beatific vision and he turns it on its head, because we know that by seeing, we can get into a lot of trouble. We know that we can become obsessed. There's all kinds of things, bad things that can happen when we get too obsessed, when we're looking at other people or at other things. So there's a dark side to vision, to seeing things. And so Hitchcock, he plays with that. And so we have the famous iconic scene before the shower scene where, so we won't show the whole shower scene, but where we have, so a lot of emphasis is on the eyes. So here we have Marion Crane. There's a lot of emphasis on the eyes and on seeing. And we have this iconic shot of Norman Bates looking through he takes a picture off the wall and he's looking through the peephole into the bathroom of Marion Crane before he goes in and stabs her while he's in tran. He's a tranny, which is even more bizarre in 1960. You know, there's all this stuff going on, this gender stuff happening once again. But Hitchcock is drawing from his Catholic imagination, and he's drawing on this very central notion of guilt and conscience and right and wrong and objectivity versus relative pleasure. And that's at the heart of this film. What's so genius about Hitchcock is that his films are about what it means to go and watch a film. And so his films are all self-reflexive. His films are about voyeurism. And voyeurism is kind of creepy. Voyeurism is when you're watching somebody and they don't know you're watching them. And you're watching them for pleasure. It's creepy. You can get arrested for doing such things. But when you think about it, going to the movies, we all become voyeurs. And so Hitchcock, that's how his films work. We all become roped into this guilt. And he's able to manipulate us. He's fascinating. He's the most studied of all the Hollywood directors. There are more volumes on Hitchcock than any other director that's ever worked in Hollywood, because his films are so important to the filmmaking experience. So I just want to show us this one clip, if we can get up to it. We're pretty close, right? Yeah, and then we'll end. And we can take questions. So if anybody wants to ask a question, I think, Judy, want them to come up here so that we can get you on tape. Yeah, let's have a little bit of sound here.
Of course, I've suggested it myself, but I hate to even think about it. She needs me. It's not as if she were a maniac, a raving thing.
He's talking about his mother. And with Hitchcock, the mother's always this evil force. So once again, he takes the mother and turns it on its head. Of course, his mother's dead. He killed his mother and stuffed her in the root cellar.
Sometimes just one time can be enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman.
Norman.
Oh, you're not going back to your room already?
I'm very tired. And I'll have a long drive tomorrow, all the way back to Phoenix.
Really?
So what's happening here is Marion Crane stole $40,000. And so she kind of confessed this, and now she's going to go back to LA to return the money. And so once again, this guilt and this confession.
Just for talk?
I'd like to, but...
All right. Well, I'll see you in the morning. I'll bring you some breakfast, all right? What time?
Very early, don't it?
All right, Miss...
Crane.
Crane, that's it.
Good night.
You can let it run, but we're going to turn the sound down. So if anybody has any questions, I'd like to have you come on up. Good, we can all go out and go to Bobby Burns. Yep.
I want to ask you a question about
Why don't you come on up so that way you're on the tape. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're going to turn it on? Okay. There we go.
There's a book that I read quite often. It's called This I Believe. It's put out by the NPR. It's on every Saturday morning, at least in Florida, but I can't find it up here. But there's a quote, there was a question asked by William Buckley about how he could be such an ardent Catholic. And his answer was, he said, I could more easily believe in God than I could believe that the Passion of Hamlet or Saint Matthew could be discerned from the molecular structure of a pork chop. And I just want to have you comment about inspiration from directors and writers.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I'm very inspired by all these filmmakers. I mean, people ask, do you have a favorite film? No, I have so many favorite films. And to me, being involved in the visual arts especially is just part of the joy of living, you know. So, and for me, it's wrapped up in my Catholic imagination, you know. So for me, it's just hand in glove, I guess. But yeah, so I agree with Buckley on that one. No, Buckley's a good guy. Yep.
Who would you consider a contemporary Catholic director today?
Okay, yeah, good question. You know, things have changed so much and are changing. If we had time, I was going to talk about the Farrellys, because I know Docky and Marion, they're friends of mine. I know Peter and Bobby and their wives. I did Peter's wedding. And I find their films to be very Catholic. All their films are about drawing people together and revealing people's weaknesses, and everybody discovering they all share these same weaknesses. So their humor is, some people consider it not tasteful, and maybe sophomoric, but the content of their films I find to be very Catholic, and I like their work. I like their films. I'd consider them. I don't know if they would consider themselves Catholic directors, but once again, part of this theory is that it doesn't matter if you're practicing or not. It matters that you were formed in that tradition, and that's how you express yourself in your art, on how you were formed. And so I would consider them. Certainly Martin Scorsese, who's still making films. He studied to be a priest. He says, I'm not a practicing Catholic, but he says everything I do as a filmmaker is about my Catholic belief system. So certainly him. Brian De Palma was influenced. He was raised Catholic, but he was very influenced by the Quakers. His family, they lived outside of Philly. He went to Quaker schools. His father was a surgeon. But he, in fact, De Palma very much sees himself as Hitchcock's stepchild or something. He tries to do capture Hitchcock's world, which he really can't do because in some ways he doesn't have that sacramental imagination. Definitely Francis Ford Coppola. You know, he talks about how important his Italian Catholic heritage was. He's doing more production, though his daughter's doing a lot of filmmaking. Those are just a few, but there are many. Almodovar, you know, I don't know if you know him, from Spain, does all these really weird films, but you know, he's coming from a sacramental background. He always celebrates beauty, kind of the eroticism of life, celebrates mother very much, the importance of the feminine in his films. And he's very contemporary and very important filmmaker. Anybody think of anybody else? But it's interesting. Yeah, you know, I think things are changing. You know, Catholicism is becoming more and more Protestant. You know, we've switched the creed from we believe to I believe, which I think is a huge symbolic shift, you know, from this sacramental communitarian to a more Protestant individual. And a lot of Protestants, mainline Protestants, have let go of their Calvinist traditions and have become more sacramental. So it's very interesting to see what's going to happen. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you to Father Gumbert, and this concludes the summer series. There are refreshments available. I don't know if you're in a hurry. You're going to have some. Oh, well, you can catch up with Father informally, and just watch out for the wires. I think we're all set. Thanks for coming.